This is Christopher John Björkness. It is January 14th, 2024. Richard Willett of Iconic inspired me to investigate, decode, and analyze the artwork of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, Juliette Bryant and Maria Farmer. He's conducted some wonderful interviews with Juliette Bryant, and she took a picture that was hanging on Jeffrey Epstein's wall of a monster raping a girl. And it made quite a sensation in the press, and she found it terribly disturbing and has no idea what it means. So I think I'm the only person in the world who's figured out exactly what this painting means, what all the symbols represent, and what it portends for humanity. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to explain what each of these cryptic Kabbalistic symbols mean. This is deeply Kabbalistic, and it fits my theory perfectly and provides additional absolute proof that Epstein Island, Pedophile Island, is a model of the Talmudic conception of the flat earth. And I'm going to go through each of these symbols which represent that model of the flat earth. I'm going to prove to you that the walrus is a camel, and that the young woman who is being molested is Eve. The green behind her represents an eye, the iris, pupil, and black ring around an eye. And all of that is deeply, deeply significant, as I'm going to show you. I'm going to go through all this. So remember that this is Eve. This walrus is not a walrus. It is a camel by the name of Samael and Lilith. And what you're seeing is the North Pole. And on the North Pole, you're seeing the moon and the sun in this flat earth model. This is the firmament of the dome. These are the waters of the abyss. This again is an eyeball. This is the white of the eyeball. This is the upper lid. This is the lower lid. And this is the devil, Samael. So what's being depicted here is the Garden of Eden. And in Talmudic lore, the serpent fornicates with Eve and infuses the evil inclination into her, and they bear the child Cain. So let's go through and analyze each one of these symbols, and it's going to blow your mind. It's not at all what anyone who doesn't understand Talmud and Kabbalah could ever figure out. And you have to wonder why all these people who do know Talmud and Kabbalah, not a single one of them in the entire world has warned the world about what this imagery represents and what a threat it is to our lives. And I think that's very significant and should be borne in mind, that there is no one other than me on the entire face of the earth who is going to tell you what this means and what a threat it is to all of us. So as I was saying, we have the upper lid of the waters of the firmament above in the flat earth model. We have the moon and the sun, which they say go around in a circle beneath this dome of the firmament. We have this walrus, which is actually a camel and a serpent. And I'm going to show you how the oral tradition of Judaism says that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was originally a camel. And when it tempted Eve and caused her to sin, it lost its legs and it was cursed to crawl on its belly. A walrus crawls on its belly. A walrus has no legs. The curse on the camel was to have its legs taken away and to crawl on its belly. A walrus has a big hump of fat on its back like a camel, and it has a snout that drapes over like a camel's snout, and its head is like a camel. So this walrus is meant to represent an aquatic camel, and it's aquatic because it's the Leviathan, the Leviathan of the book of Job, which is Samael and Lilith. So this is all cryptic symbolism of Samael and Lilith as the Leviathan, fornicating and raping Eve to create the child Cain and to infuse the evil inclination into humanity through Cain. We have the waters of the abyss below. The black ring around the iris represents the flat earth. The pupil represents the realm of the temple. The iris, which is green, is Jerusalem. And it could also be seen as representing the tree of death. But primarily, this is indicating that this is all a model of the flat earth. And it's a model that Jeffrey Epstein utilized to convert Epstein Island into a scale representation of the Talmudic conception of the flat earth. The island is the white of the eye, which is portrayed in the Talmud model as an ocean around the earth. So many of you, if you have been following my videos, already know that these symbols represent the idea that Adam and Eve, here represented as Yeshua, the tetragrammaton, turned into a pentagrammaton by the addition of the letter Shin. So instead of Yahweh, it's Yeshua to represent Jesus Christ, depicts Adam as a pentagram and as an androgyne. Adam is Eve. Eve is separated out from Adam. This is Leviathan, again with 5 letters representing the pentagram, representing Gevurah and Din on the Sephirotic tree, the 5th emanation, representing an apple which has 5 seeds which form a pentagram if you cut an apple in half. And Satan has a male aspect, like Adam is the male aspect of Adam. And Satan has a female aspect, Lilith, just as Adam had a female aspect, Eve. And Adam and Eve were created as an androgyne because they were created in the image of the Godhead, which is composed of the male aspect God and the female aspect Shekinah. And at the highest levels of Kabbalah, they understand that Samael and Lilith are identical with God and Shekinah, and they meet in Malkut at the earth. Lilith and Shekinah meet at Malkut in the earth. But remember that this Samael, Lilith are simply the male and female aspects of Satan, and this picture is depicting the serpent, Satan, having sex with Eve to produce the evil child, Cain. And that's what Jeffrey Epstein wanted to do, because Jeffrey Epstein believed that he was Samael. That is, if he's not still alive, he believed that he was Samael, and he was going to infuse his seed into all of humanity. He wanted to produce 20 pregnant women a day to create a dual seed line in humanity, where the Gentile aspect of that seed line would have his blood, the blood of Samael, just as Samael himself, that camel walrus, infused his seed into Eve to produce the dual seed line of humanity, where Cain is half Satan's blood, and Abel and Seth are made out of Adam himself and herself as Adam and Eve. So this is old Lilith in the Garden of Eden. And notice that she looks like a twin to Adam. That is because Lilith and Adam were made out of the same clay, and they were originally married to each other. Adam's first wife was Lilith, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, which is depicted in that Epstein painting as the camel walrus with a serpent tail. And this is Michelangelo's fresco on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, where Lilith is depicted here with her serpentine tail. Remember that in Genesis chapter 3, verses 14 and 15, the serpent was cursed. after Lilith tempted Eve, the serpent, which was originally a camel, lost its legs and was cursed to crawl on the ground the way that a walrus does. So this is the verse from Genesis 3:14, and the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And then it continues, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her, and it shall bruise thy heel, and thou shalt bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So we have this war between the descendants of Cain, representing the Gentiles, and the descendants of Eve, representing Seth and Jacob and Jewish people. And part of their mythology is that there is this dual seed line, which was created by the serpent sleeping with Eve. But remember, the serpent was originally the camel, and the camel is being depicted as having lost its legs in the aquatic form of the Leviathan, being portrayed as if a walrus with that serpentine tail. Just like Lilith is here given the serpentine tail. We have the walrus being given the serpentine tail because in this form, it is in the aquatic form of the Leviathan. And I'm going to explain why all this is showing up at the North Pole with ice and mountains. It's all part of this mythology of the flat earth. And this painting fits perfectly my theory that Epstein was trying to replicate that flat earth model. So a lot of people will find it hard to believe that Judaism teaches that the serpent slept with Eve to produce Cain. So I'm going to provide the proof of that. This is from the Babylonian Talmud, tractate Yavamot, folio 103b. The Gemara answers, he implants filth in her, that's his seed, and he being the serpent in the form of Lilith, actually, as the Kabbalah explains, and contaminates her as her body accepts his semen, her being Eve. As Rabbi Yochanan also said, based on his understanding that the serpent seduced Eve into having sexual relations with him, when the serpent came upon Eve, he infected her with moral contamination. That's the evil inclination. And this contamination remained in all human beings. When the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai, their contamination ceased. Whereas with regard to Gentiles who did not stand at Mount Sinai, their contamination never ceased. Here is another citation from the Babylonian Talmud, Avodah Zarah, folio 22b. And if you wish, say instead, even when he finds the wife, he also engages in bestiality with an animal. This is referring to Gentiles. They have a very racist, negative idea of Gentiles. As the master said, the animal of a Jew is more appealing to Gentiles than their own wives. Why isn't this racism condemned? I don't understand. As Rabbi Yochanan says, at the time when the snake came upon Eve, that's when the snake made love to Eve, at the time of their sin of her eating from the tree of knowledge, called in the Zohar the tree of death because it brought about the curse of death to humanity, it infected her with moral contamination, and this contamination lingers in all human beings. The Gemara says if that is so, a Jew should also be suspected of engaging in bestiality. The Gemara answers with regard to the Jewish people who stood at Mount Sinai and received the Torah, their contamination ended. So they're special and they're privileged and they're holy and they're wonderful, and Gentiles are poisoned and evil and the children of Satan, according to this mythology. Whereas in the case of Gentiles who did not stand at Mount Sinai and received the Torah, their contamination has not ended and cannot end until they are completely exterminated. Shabbat in the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Shabbat, Folio 146a, Rabbi Yochanan then explained to them, why are Gentiles ethically contaminated? It is because they did not stand on Mount Sinai, as when the snake came upon Eve, i.e., when it seduced her to eat from the tree of knowledge, it infected her with moral contamination. And this contamination remained in all human beings. When the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai, their contamination ended, whereas Gentiles did not stand at Mount Sinai, and their contamination never ceased. I just want to show you that this is pervasive throughout the Talmud, this hatred of Gentiles, this stigmatizing Gentiles as if satanic. And it gets even worse in the Midrash and in Kabbalah, and it's also present throughout the Old Testament. This contempt of Gentiles and desire to purge Gentiles from the world. A very famous, very esoteric book that's difficult for someone who doesn't have this esoteric knowledge to even begin to understand is the first book to really explain the fact that Samael and Lilith are the male and female aspects of androgynous Satan. And this is Treatise on the Left Emanation by Rabbi Isaac ben Jacob HaKohen. And you won't get anything out of it reading it unless you've been following my work and have a very deep esoteric understanding of Kabbalah. In answer to your question concerning Lilith, I shall explain to you the essence of the matter. Concerning this point, there is a received tradition from the sages who made use of secret knowledge of the lesser palaces, which is the manipulation of demons, and a ladder by which, and I'm going to get into this in some future discussions, by which one ascends to the prophetic levels. In this tradition, it is made clear that Samael and Lilith were born as one, just as Adam and Eve were born as one, because they were created in the image of the androgynous gods, the Elohim. Similar to the form of Adam and Eve, who were also born as one, reflecting what is above. Above are the gods, the Elohim, God and Shekinah. This is the account of Lilith, which was received by the sages in the secret knowledge of the palaces. The matron Lilith is the mate of Samael. Both of them were born at the same hour in the image of Adam and Eve, intertwined in each other. This is depicting humanity as satanic. Asmodeus, the great king of the demons, has as his mate the lesser younger Lilith, daughter of the king, whose name is Persephone. The name of his mate is Mehetabel, daughter of Metred, and their daughter is Lilith. This goes on to explain that Samael and Lilith are the great Leviathan, which is why the Epstein painting depicts all this taking place in the northern Arctic Ocean, which relates to the North Pole, and I'll explain all that later. I shall now teach you a wonderful innovation. You already know that evil Samael and wicked Lilith are like a sexual pair who by means of an intermediary receive an evil and wicked emanation from one and emanate to the other. I shall explain this relying on the esoteric meaning in the verse. In that day, the Lord will punish with his great, cruel, mighty sword Leviathan, the twisted serpent, and Leviathan, the tortuous serpent. This is Lilith. And he will slay the dragon of the sea. That's why this is taking place in the sea, because it's portraying Samael and Lilith as the Leviathan. Isaiah 27:1. As there is a pure Leviathan in the sea, and it is called a serpent, so there is a great defiled serpent in the sea. In the literal sense, the same holds true above in a hidden way. As above, so below. Everything on the earth is mirrored in the heavens. The heavenly serpent is a blind prince, the image of an intermediary between Samael and Lilith. His name is Tananan Ivir. The masters of tradition said that just as this serpent slithers without eyes, so the supernal serpent has the image of a supernatural form without color. These are the eyes. The traditionists call it an eyeless creature, therefore its name is Tananiver. He is the bond, the accompaniment, and the union between Samael and Lilith. If he were created whole in the fullness of his emanation, he would have destroyed the world in an instant. That is why the Leviathan has two sexes, and one was destroyed so that the Leviathan couldn't breed and replicate itself. This citation gives proof of what I've been saying, that the serpent was initially a camel. And that because the serpent sinned against God and pissed off God, God cursed the serpent to lose its legs and crawl on its belly. And a walrus crawls on its belly and looks like a camel without legs. And it has flippers and it's aquatic. So it takes the form of this camel that has been cursed to crawl on its belly in the ocean, the Arctic Ocean by the North Pole. So Stone discerns a similar development in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which has a lot about Samael and the scapegoat ritual. He notes the theme of angelic jealousy of Adam's and Adam's superiority to the angels is his ability to name the animals. The fall of the archangel Samael is described together with his host. He found the serpent, and its likeness was like a sort of camel, and is mounted and rode it. This relationship is likened to that of a horse and a rider. The Zohar talks about the male rider on the camel, representing Samael and Lilith as one being. The Zohar, Volume 1, Folio 35b, attesting a similar tradition, also understands Samael, Satan, as the rider of the serpent. You can pause this and go through and read it. I found a very good article with a lot of the literature. This is by Dr. Baruch Fox. It is titled Rivka Imenu, which means our mother Rebecca. Rebecca as in Isaac's wife, as in the mother of Esau and Jacob, is a Gilgul, meaning a reincarnation of Chava, meaning Eve, rode the camel to subdue the Nachash Ha-Kadmoni, the serpent, before its legs were cut off. It was a camel before its legs were cut off when it was cursed by God. So this is talking about Rebecca as the reincarnation of Eve. Eve produced the children of Satan and the children of the Holy One through Eve's male half, Adam. She produced Cain, then she produced Abel. Abel still had some of the evil inclination from Cain. Cain slew Abel, and then Seth was born out of Adam and Eve, and he inherited the soul of Abel without inheriting any of the evil seed of Cain. And they portrayed Gentiles as descendants of Cain and Jews as descendants of Seth and Abel, but cleansed Abel in the form of Seth. And then this story is retold in the story of Rebecca and Isaac, and Rebecca riding a camel, just like Eve being ridden by Lilith and Samael. And Rebecca produces two children. Esau is the reincarnation of Cain and bears the evil seed of Satan, of Samael and Lilith. And Jacob is the reincarnation of Seth and is cleansed of that poisonous evil inclination of the poison god Samael. So this article goes through and describes all that, talking about Rebecca riding on camels and how that signifies all of this. Know that Rebecca riding on camels is an allusion to that infamous Nachash, that's the snake or serpent, Samael, about whom our blessed rabbis said that he was like a camel before his legs were cut off. Samael came and rode on him to entice Eve. Rode on him is actually Lilith. to infect Eve, and he infected her with depravity. Now she rode on him in keeping with the Pasuk, a humble man riding upon a donkey to gain control over him. And this relates to the Messiah and the coming of the Messiah, son of David, which all this portends. Epstein and Maxwell and that whole pedophile ring was doing the service of Samael in order to bring about the rainbow of Messiah, son of David, riding on this donkey. And this donkey represents Seth Typhon, the God of Israel. So you can find this online and go through and read this. It talks about how Hashem, God, said to the serpent, because you have done this, accursed you beyond all cattle and beyond all beasts of the field. Upon your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. And this is explained as what becomes in that painting a walrus on its belly with no legs. Samael was the great ministering angel in heaven. He was Lucifer, the right hand of God. He could find no creature more adept at evil than the serpent. And it states, and the serpent was more cunning than any of the beasts of the field. Its form resembled a type of camel. He mounted and rode on it. All of this is symbolic of what is being portrayed in that thing. Let us elaborate further on the subject of Rebecca riding a camel, which we have explained alludes to the appearance of the Nachash HaKadmoni before its legs were cut off. We have learned in the Gemara of Yoma 86b, how can we tell if a person performed teshuvah if he is presented again with the exact same circumstances which he initially failed and sinned and yet does not succumb, such as with the same woman, etc., etc. I just want to ensure people that what I'm saying, though it seems far-fetched and ridiculous, and it certainly is ridiculous and far-fetched, it is in fact the truth. And I have proven that. And it gets even weirder as we go along, believe it or not. So these are some passages I found in the Zohar, which again identify the camel as Satan. You can go through and read it if you want. It is from, these passages are the Sochino translation of the Zohar, Shemot, Volume 2, Section 2, page. This will actually be folio 236A, and this is the same, page 242B. This camel is all-devouring and all-exterminating, is always ready to inflict death on man. So that was the plan of Jeffrey Epstein, was to kill us all off, to put his seed into all the women of the Gentile side in preparation for turning the God of Israel against all of us, to gain the God of Israel's assistance in exterminating us, to create the rainbow messianic era of the unicorn, the behemoth, who slaughters the Leviathan in the form of Messiah, son of David. The starting point of the grades of the evil side, which is the beginning of the outside grade, assumes the shape of the head of a male riding on a camel. And anybody who studies Kabbalah is going to see that image cropping up again and again, and never explained to the gullible goyim as what it really signifies, which is their extermination, and the fact that they are viewed as being the seed of this camel and being Satan himself. So let's get into Epstein Island and how that painting relates to my theory that Epstein Island is attempting to replicate the Talmudic model of the flat earth. And you'll notice the sun spinning around under the dome, rotating around this black ring. and you'll see the moon doing the same. And beneath this is the black sun. Beneath this is hell. The other side of the flat earth is hell. They want to flip the earth over. They want to kill off all the human beings on this side and live in a subterranean world of hell as 600,000 immortal androgynes, as I have been explaining. So notice that in the middle of this is the North Pole. And the reason for that is that the oral tradition of Judaism teaches that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of death, was planted in the north of the garden, and the tree of life was planted in the east of the garden. So that represents the northerners. And in the book I'm working on, I explain all that in the third and fourth in my Satanic Secrets of Jesus Christ series. I explain how all that relates to the Garden of Hesperides, the Hyperboreans, the north wind of the Greeks. And I give examples in other Kabbalistic literature where it talks about this northern people. And that is why in that Epstein painting, this is being portrayed as the North Pole. And you see the moon and the sun exactly the same as in that flat earth model. You see the firmament above, you see the waters of the abyss below, and you see the earth, and you see the black part in the middle of the earth. And I'm going to explain that flat earth graphic that I showed you is only the beginning and hides of a lot of how the oral tradition of Judaism explains this model. So take note of the North Star above the hole in the middle, which is the portal by which you can enter and cross over to the other side into the subterranean world of hell, the other side of the flat earth, which they plan to be the new paradise, the new Garden of Eden. So this is the Talmudic model. You can see it's identical. Christians tend to put the sun on the left and the moon on the right, and Kabbalists, the moon on the left and the sun on the right, as in Epstein's painting. You have the mountains surrounding the earth. You have hell below. There are 7 levels of hell. You have the abyss of the waters, and you have the waters of the firmament. And then above that is the divine realm of the Godhead. As I've explained in a lot of my other videos, I strongly recommend that you visit my website, CJBBooks.com. Look into my books at the bottom of my website. You can find links to my social media and my video channels. Start watching my videos, and all this will become even clearer to you. But I'm doing my best to explain it here. So this is another graphic depicting that same thing, waters above the firmament, the moon and the sun orbiting around underneath in this mythology, the earth surrounded by Antarctica and with the mountains, and all of that is depicted in that Epstein painting. And it is showing it at the North Pole because it is showing Eve beneath the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was planted in the north of the garden, which represents, of course, the Arctic. This is the cover of Manly P. Hall's book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. You can see that the roots of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil shoot through that North Pole in the middle of this flat earth model, which is surrounded by Antarctica in this mythology, and that the tree of life and the tree of death meet in the earth, which is Malkut, which is Shekinah, where Shekinah and Lilith dwell together and are actually the same being, 2 aspects of the same being. So the other side of the flat earth is hell, and that's what they want to do. They want to turn the earth into hell. This garden of paradise becomes the garden of paradise in their minds of hell, which is why they are digging tunnels everywhere, building underground bunkers to survive the war of the apocalypse, which they are going to stage with nuclear weapons. And just as Noah had his ark to survive the 40 days and nights of the flood, they have their tunnels and bunkers to survive the nuclear holocaust, the chemical weapons, the biological weapons. And then they'll emerge, and then they'll create even more expanded subterranean dwellings to create their paradise of hell. And they are also blackening the skies to block out the sun through geoengineering to convert the earth into hell, because they hate the god Ra. They hate the sun as a god. They instead worship Seth Typhon as their god. And I'm going to prove to you that Epstein Island is in the shape of the head of the ass that was contained in the Temple of Solomon, which is why Antiochus IV Epiphanes defiled the temple, because they were worshiping the devil in the temple as Seth Typhon. And the Macedonians, the Greeks, understood, because they controlled Egypt at that time. They understood that this represented worshiping the evil god Seth Typhon, who wants to kill off humanity and is the god of chaos. So he forced them to eat their sacred animal, the pig, and to sacrifice it. And this was all done in accord with the Egyptian books of spells on how to defeat Seth Typhon. And Jeffrey Epstein bought an island that looks exactly like the head of that ass, as I'm going to show you. So stick around. It gets weirder and weirder. So this is also a depiction. We have the Sephirotic tree of life on top, which is the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. Below it is the Qliphotic tree of death, the tree of knowledge and good and evil, where Eve is being raped in that painting. And they meet on the earth, which is Malkut. This is a graphic I made quite a while ago that again shows this sun and the moon, the black sun beneath in hell on the other side of the flat earth. It appears that the earth is orbiting around the North Star, so they always depict that as a vortex and a swirl around the North Star, the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper, and the 7 stars of that relating to the 7 planets, relating to the 7 levels of hell. And again, they want this tree to turn over. They want to make hell the new paradise. They want to destroy us. They want to destroy the sun, and they want the black sun to reign. And they perceive the moon as being Shekhinah. And when it is a new moon that is fully black, she gets raped by Samael, just as Eve was raped by Samael. And they try to prevent that by giving Samael the scapegoat to confuse him, so that he puts the sins of Israel onto the Gentiles and loses interest in having sex with Shekhinah. Gershom Scholem on the mystical shape of the Godhead, basic concepts in the Kabbalah, Shocking Books, New York, 1991, pages 65 and 66, writes about what I've been saying, that this takes place in that painting at the North Pole, because the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was planted in the north of the garden. This is explained in the text of The Secret of the Tree of Knowledge by Rabbi Ezra ben Solomon of Gerona. Regarding the matter of the tree of knowledge, of which Adam was commanded to eat, you already know that the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge are one tree below, but 2 trees above. The tree of knowledge is from the northern side, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of death, the tree under which Eve is raped, is in the northern side, and so therefore it's depicted in the Arctic with a walrus taking the place and forming an aquatic camel. But the tree of life is from the eastern side, from whence light emanates into the entire world, and the potency of Satan is there, and it is written in the Jerusalem Talmud. What is Satan? This teaches us that the Holy One, blessed be He, has a quality whose name is evil, and it lies to the north of God, as it is written, Out of the north, the evil shall break forth, and from the north it comes. And in my book, I talk about these northern people and why they so hate the northern Europeans. The tree of knowledge, which comes from the side of the north, from the side of Satan and evil. So let's get into Epstein Island, which also relates to that painting. And let me show you the painting once again to show what I'm going to be talking about. So we have this eye. This is the iris. The green is the iris. The pupil is black. There is a black ring around the iris. There is this white island. There is the upper lid. There is the lower lid. There is the sun and the moon beneath the firmament, beneath the upper eyelid. So this was explained by Rashi, gives an alternative meaning for the word, a blemish on the eyelid. He continues, we read about this in homiletic stories. The eye is a mini representation of the world, and that eye is Epstein Island. The upper eyelid represents the rakia, the vault over the sky that contains the stars, and the lower lid represents the earth. The white of the eye, the conjunctiva, represents the ocean that encircles the world. An island is obviously surrounded by the ocean. And the dark part, which is circular, the pupil, represents the orbit of the sun. And that's why you have that black sun below in that diagram I showed. Black sun below represents the iris of the eye, represents the pupil in the iris of the eye. And it is even better explained in the Derech Eretz Zuta. The world can be compared to the eyes of a person. The whites of the eyes are the ocean that encircles the entire world. The dark part, the ring around the iris, and remember that black ring around the green iris in Jeffrey Epstein's painting, is the world. The iris, literally the folded part of the pupil, is Jerusalem. And the pupil, literally the image in the iris, is the temple. May it be rebuilt speedily and in our days and the days of all Israel. Amen. May it never be rebuilt. This is also quoted in Daniel C. Matt's commentary and notations, note 37 in the Zohar, Va'era 223b, published as the Zohar Pritzker edition by Stanford University Press. And it gives that same quote from the Derech Eretz Zuta, gives the precise citation and where you can find it. And it goes through and explains that whole thing, which Jeffrey Epstein tried to replicate with his island. And he created the temple with the dome representing the firmament above and representing Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the dome of the rock that has to be destroyed for the temple to be rebuilt. He depicted Lilith as the moon. The palm trees represent the green of the iris of Jerusalem. Inside the temple is the Holy of Holies, the black cube, which is the black pig of Seth. And the temple is to contain all the gold in the world. And there may be tunnels beneath this, signifying the 7 levels of hell. We have the ocean surrounding the flat earth. And that painting I view as absolute proof that I am correct, that this is what Epstein was up to. He wanted to replicate the model of the flat earth. I don't know why this isn't letting me get to my additional slides, But I do have a slide of the island as Seth Typhon. And let me see if I can pull that up. There we go. So you can see, this was so funny to me when I noticed it. You can see that Epstein Island takes the form of the ass head of the god Seth Typhon, who is the god of Israel. You can see the two ears are formed here. This is the long snout. You have the eyeball. The head is cut off as it was in the temple and stood. There was a golden head of an ass in the temple that they would worship. And they also had a statue of Moses riding an ass in the temple. And Epstein Island takes the form of that temple. So I hope that that explains this incredibly esoteric painting that has caused such a stir in the world ever since Juliette Bryant released her picture of it. And I'll go over it with you one more time, just so that you understand and can tie all this together of what's actually being depicted in this painting. You have Jerusalem, the iris of the eye. You have the central pupil of the eye, which is the black sun, and the middle of that is the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, which Epstein depicted as his 7 blue-striped temple, and I've explained what all that means. You have the earth as the black ring around the iris. You have the oceans of the white snow. You have Eve being raped by the demon, which is the aquatic camel in the form of a walrus with the fat hump with no legs, because it was cursed by God for tempting Eve to lose its legs and become a serpent. That serpent is the Leviathan, which is why this is depicted in the water, surrounded by the waters of the abyss of hell below the earth. You have the firmament, the dome above the earth. You have the sun and the moon in this flat earth model, and all of that was replicated on Epstein Island. I want to thank Juliette Bryant for capturing this picture. I hope she now has some peace and finally comes to understand exactly what this painting represents, why she found it so traumatic and tormenting, because it is traumatic and tormenting. Epstein was depicting himself as Samael, as Lilith, together with Maxwell, raping girls who were to be Eve, to be infused with his seed so that he could breed the children of Cain and create a dual seed line on earth, which would be exterminated so that the pure seed line of Adam through Seth and Eve through Seth, representing the Jewish people, would be the only ones left standing after the Leviathan and the behemoth kill each other off. The behemoth is depicted in the art of these victims as the unicorn. The unicorn is to destroy the Leviathan of the European peoples. The unicorn represents behemoth, the Muslims, and the Marxists, and then they themselves are destroyed after Messiah, son of David, rides this unicorn in the heavens, in the clouds, in the form of a rainbow, and then takes over the entire earth. he kills off those who helped him. He kills off the Muslims and the Marxists of China, Russia, and the Gog and Magog countries of Islam. It's all about treachery. It's all about deception. It's all about leading people into committing collective suicide in the name of offering them salvation. The Christians commit collective suicide by worshiping the Leviathan in the form of Jesus Christ, who returns as the Antichrist to be the champion of Israel under Messiah, son of Joseph, and under Armilus, so that the Leviathan engages in a war of mutual consumption with the behemoth of the unicorn of Islam and the Marxists of the East, the land powers. The Leviathan is the sea powers. We see the U.S. Navy, the British Navy being lured into wars with the land powers of Iran, of Yemen, of Hezbollah, of Gaza, so that these two, the Leviathan and the behemoth, exterminate each other. And guess who's left? Messiah, son of David, and his 600,000 immortal androgynes to inherit the other side of this earth, which is hell, that will be their paradise if all goes according to their plans. I want to thank you all very much for watching. I want to thank Norbert. I want to thank Carolus for your very generous support, and all of the other wonderful people who have been supporting me. I need to get that list ready to put up at the end of my videos. I apologize to you all, but I am tremendously grateful to you all. Anyone who would like to contribute in some of my video channels, there'll be links in the description below where you can find where you can contribute. You can also contribute at my website, CJBBooks.com, where I have all my books, which talks about all this stuff. At the bottom of the website, you'll find links to my video pages, and beneath each one of my book titles, there are donation links. And we're planning to do a group conference show on my findings, explaining and analyzing all of this art, together with Juliet Bryant and Richard Willett, and I hope that comes together maybe as soon as this forthcoming week. So please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss that. And I want to thank you all for watching. I will see you all next time. Bye for now.